You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Welcome to the 42 Cast, your ultimate answer to fandom, geekiness, and everything. As always, I am your host, Nathan, and we have another great episode lined up for you where we're going to talk about the 6th and final season of Supergirl. But before we do that, let's meet our cast for this week. So starting off, he's our very own Lex Luthor, the man you love to hate, and that's Ryan. How are you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing good. How are you, Nathan?
I'm doing all right.
All right.
What's new and exciting for you?
Well, I was so excited about doing this podcast that I got COVID to put it off.
That's right.
As long as I could.
I was gonna put a disclaimer at the front that I'm like, we're recording this quite a while after the season ended because, originally we were waiting for you to finish watching the show.
Yeah.
And then you got there and then you got COVID. And so then it's like, oh no, we got to push it back again. So it's been several months now that the show has been out. So my memories, but it's fine.
See, that's funny. It's still burned into mine pretty strongly.
All right. Save it for when we're actually talking about the season.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, no, anything, going on lately or
just been trying to catch up on everything geeky and nerdy. Every time I turn around, it's a new show, it's a new movie, it's a new product. It's almost I almost despair at this point in time, but of trying to stay relevant. But as long as I get the memes, I figure I'm good.
Yeah, it's almost like we had a year with almost no content and now they're trying to make up for it.
Yeah, very much so.
All right, but yeah, it's good to have you back on the show, Ryan.
Good to be here.
All right, and next up, he is the guy that always has a drink in his hand. He is my buddy James. How are you doing, James?
Good.
What are you drinking, James?
Funny enough, actually, I don't have any alcohol on hand right now. It is 11 o'clock.
I know.
My time.
That doesn't stop you.
I mean, I always have a bottle nearby.
Okay.
But
because you
right
just
now
have you've had spiked coffee before and stuff while you've been on the show.
That's true. No, I didn't take any time to do anything. I looked at the clock because I've been involved in a new game for the PS5, Horizon Forbidden West, and the game is amazing. It's such a deep story, and so I'm in the game, and then I suddenly look up and I go, "Oh, I have 3 minutes before I'm supposed to do this podcast. I should go get logged on." So here I am. I guess I could put scotch and raspberry lemonade Mountain Dew. I feel like that just really ruins the scotch. I feel like some Scottish ghost will just show up in my room and beat me to death with
the
bottle.
Phantom Piper. Oh man, we're turning it into a Scooby-Doo episode.
Right? I'd watch it.
Yeah. All right. Well, wow. Yeah. No, I feel like this is an event. It is a sober James episode. So
I know.
We'll just have to see how that goes.
We will.
All right. Well, it's good to have you on the show, James.
Yeah. Always good to be here.
All right. And finally, she is our resident expert on Kryptonians. I don't know. You come on to tell us about these great shows of the CW, and that is my buddy Cammy. How are you doing, Cammy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Nathan. And before you ask what I'm drinking, I'll let you know it's dandelion tea.
Oh, okay. So do they actually crush dandelions and
yes.
part of the tea?
Yes,
Okay.
it's dandelion roots and assorted other herbs. I'm not sure. I presume it's not questionable, but over the course of the next hour or two, we might find out.
Right. And has the Gina Torres cutout been behind you before, or am I just noticing it now?
She's been there this entire time. She
No,
She has-
I mean, like in
she's
previous
moved
times you've
houses
been-
with me.
Okay. Yeah, I mean previous times you've been on, not like.
Yes, she's been behind previous times I've been on. We keep her here in the basement, and I often forget to let guests know that she's down here, and they will come down and be legitimately frightened at, a 6-foot life-size cutout of Gina Torres. But that's only fair. I was likewise frightened when this cutout showed up at my door one day, like
Oh,
6 years ago.
Somebody just like left it on your doorstep and didn't like give any context.
It was in unmarked packaging, but I later found out it was from a show and that she was on, and it was all, they had sent me stuff before. So it wasn't,
Oh, okay.
it was an odd day, that one day.
That's almost like a Twilight Zone episode or something. It's just like the cutout just shows up and it's like you try
Yeah.
to get rid of it and it just shows up again or something like that.
Welcome to my life.
But what's new for you, Cammy?
Oh, just like Ryan said, trying to keep up with the, avalanche of new content that's suddenly coming out now that, the industry, came back together and started putting out superhero stuff again. And now we live in a whole new world where I've got new TV every week again.
Yeah. No, it's a lot. I mean, I'm kind of compartmentalizing and like doing streaming services like when I get to them and just trying to keep up with like the broadcast stuff, because it's like I can stop paying for a streaming service and then pay for it and just binge what they have and then stop paying for it again. So it's like a way to keep it like sort of sectioned off and just getting to it when I can get to it.
You've hacked the system. You need to write a self-help TV book on how to juggle these things.
Yeah, I've got to do something. So, all right, but it's good to have you back on the show, Cammy.
It's great to be here.
All right, and next up, those of you who've been following us for a while know we got our 5-minute controversy. And in the 5-minute controversy, we just talk about something that has caused a lot of discussion in the geekosphere, just as a way for us to unwind before we talk about our main topic, and also give you at home a little insight into how we think about, certain things that are going on. And so today, what I wanted to talk about was the sort of deep fake technology that they're using. And in the past, there have been some uses of this for actors that have passed away. So, like for instance, in Rogue One, Star Wars Rogue One, they did have Peter Cushing's character Grand Moff Tarkin. They did have Princess Leia, since Carrie Fisher had passed away, and they created those characters digitally and sort of mapped them on like an actual actor that was in the piece, just to convey some things that they couldn't convey without those characters. But now they're starting to use it for actors that are still with us. And it's a way of recasting without recasting, kind of. It's like, oh, well, we want like a young Mark Hamill, so we can just completely create him. He doesn't even have to be involved. He doesn't have to do any voice work. We can just take some sound clips and the computer will do it in his voice, but also with like his cadence and everything else. So it's not even like, like stilted like computer voice work used to be when you take sound clips and stuff. It sounds very conversational in the way that they do it. And so some people think that this is not right, because especially since you don't need the actor's involvement or anything, that this could get into sort of a territory that we don't want to get into. So I'm just kind of curious for everybody's take on that, as far as, do you think this is just a natural evolution of technology and we just have to deal with it? We'll be seeing the same characters looking the same way, forever now for these big franchises? Or do you think that this is like, oh, this has all kinds of problems because you don't need the actor? Do the actors get paid? Like how, you're using their image, you're using their voice, all that kind of stuff. Like this is really scary territory and something that we should really put the brakes on. Let's start with you on this one, James.
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's a difficult area. I think my perspective comes down to it turns into the imaging, right? So the image of Luke Skywalker has kind of always been what Mark Hamill looks like in the original movies, like in every aspect of the industry. So in a comic book, it's relatively the same design as what looks like Mark Hamill, albeit with a little bit of our artistic expression added to it. But we see it in the way they use book covers and things like that. So it does kind of come down to that question of, like, I think for myself, of, does the actor have the rights to their own image? So every time you're using it, they're getting paid. But then we do delve into that world of, like, well, we're also recreating a voice as well. Like, and yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same lines. It's like, that voice is kind of unique, but at the same time, we have voice actors who can do great impressions of other actors and do them in animation, as represent, like, Family Guy is a great example where they do find voice actors who occasionally sound just like the actor, but it's not, and so there's no rights paid to the actor that's being impressioned, so to speak. So yeah, it's a weird area. I don't know. Because from a storytelling perspective, like, if they're trying to tell that backstory, I get that, but at the same time, it's just like, you guys kind of shoehorned yourself when you made the decision, like, oh, we'll just use Luke Skywalker. You could have used it in any number of other, like, Force users that were in the universe that were established back in, like, the Legends and everything, prior to be the ones to take Grogu and teach him, but you chose this specifically. So I don't know. I don't like it. I think it's, I don't know how to wade through it.
Okay. That's fair. And Cammy, what about you?
I think this is an area where we have to live in this area where something can be tacky but not wrong. And I think this is tacky. I think it's uncomfortable to watch. I think the ethics behind it make us kind of squirm, but it's not technically wrong. As James just mentioned, this is not the only way that somebody's likeness is represented outside of, their control, their authority, whatever. We see this in art made for a given show. We see this in a comic book representation, certainly is relevant to what we talk about here. We see this in, maybe an accompanying book that goes with the show, where they may be describing a character to T or using some sort of art of them on the cover. And there's times where it can get questionable. I think of times where portrayed in their likeness, maybe portrayed doing something in a comic book that, had this been a live action TV show, they may not have done, right? So there's these gray areas that can come into this, even aside from the fact that that's just not me and you are making it look like it is me. But it's not technically wrong because it's the character that's being shown and not the person. Now, if this was something where they were trying to promote this franchise and they create some sort of, computer generated version of Mark Hamill doing interviews and doing PR for the show, and it is him, then we've run into an issue because you're impersonating a real person who is not a licensed character of the show. But technically here, they are not showing Mark Hamill, the person, they are showing Luke Skywalker. The two happen to be the same image, but it is a fictional character, so they are not putting words in his mouth technically. So it's not wrong. It's just very kind of cheesy, kind of squirmy, kind of tacky.
All right. And Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I think to a large extent we're all on the same page. This is inevitable. This was going to happen the moment they began, like, de-aging technology and so forth. And honestly, it's a matter of where the technology is outpacing our ethics to an extent, because, and the sad part is, it's Disney who's at the forefront of this, so they're going to put the dollar value above anything else. And if they can find a way to use an artist's likeness without, compensating that artist, they're gonna do this. We've seen this time and time again. Until maybe there's enough bad publicity.
Yeah, but do we know that Mark Hamill wasn't paid for the use of his image in any way?
We don't. But this is where I'm saying where the technology is outstripping the ethics and the legality of it, because we don't have a norm yet for this. We don't have this is your standard likeness and live action likeness, through technology usage. And so on the one hand, I think it's good for the story, good for the fans, not necessarily good for the individual artists. But the flip side of that is, prior to this technology, Disney they could recast. That was always what you would do. You would just recast a new actor that looked similar to that original actor, or at least got their vibe. I mean, we think about this for a second. We've had 6 James Bonds? We could have been having Sean Connery this whole time. And maybe the next James Bond will be Sean Connery again now, thanks to this technology. So that's not necessarily bad, but it does. So there's a flip side. So we're not getting exposed to new artists because of this, and using this technology, we're not necessarily compensating the original artists the way they should be. Maybe there's a middle ground where they're getting compensated not at the level as if they were actually there, actually performing, actually doing it, because it is still their likeness, it is still their portrayal of that character, but not as much as, but more than voice work, less than actual performing and acting, something in the middle there. But I think that's what we're gonna have. There's gonna have to be, and honestly, it's gonna have to come down to the law. There's gonna have to be a law that dictates this, because if Disney or big studios are in control of it, then yeah, they're going to exploit it every chance that they get. And like literally, if we went laissez-faire on this, by 2025, every Star Wars and Marvel movie is not gonna have any of the, Robert Downey Jr. is gonna be back, baby, because we don't need Robert Downey Jr. anymore, and that's what we would get.
Well, yeah, you actually brought up the thing that I thought, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna come at this from an angle that nobody else is gonna think of. But yeah, you're that's exactly the route I was gonna go, Ryan, because yeah, I mean, when you think about it, like how many people over time have played Hamlet, right? And how many people over time have played like any classic like theatrical character, right? Like hundreds, thousands, of people have portrayed these characters. But nowadays we get very special about like particular parts, like, oh, like this actor, the actor that initially played this part, like they're it. And if you don't have that actor, then that, I can't accept it anymore. But the thing is, like, that's how, theater and performances have always worked, is, eventually you recast, you bring in another person, play the same role, do whatever. So yeah, I think that's like the real issue with this is, digitally recreated characters. And yeah, there is somebody that they're mapping Luke onto. So there is a performer there, but he probably gets paid a whole lot less, since it's not his image, it's not his voice. And even if he is paid, fairly well, nobody knows who he is. So he doesn't get like the kind of, recognition that you would as an actor, usually playing a part like that, So again, it's one
David Prowse,
right. Yeah. Like a David Prowse. Right. Exactly. Or Peter Mayhew, or the people who are completely covered for the, for their, during their performances. So yeah, I think that there's sort of an issue there, because if we do this too much, you get that issue. And it's kind of like the thing that people brought up when Stan Lee passed away, is it's like, oh, we can still use him in cameos because we can recreate him digitally and put him in like every Marvel movie. And I was like, it still just doesn't seem right. Like, to me, if it's not him, then it misses the point. The point is, we are recognizing Stan for like the contributions he made to media by putting him in those movies. If you don't have him, but you're just putting his image in, it's kind of missing the point. And I don't know if it feels almost kind of the same way here, as like we're honoring Mark Hamill and his character, by including him in these stories, but Mark Hamill isn't involved. So it's like, are we really honoring the character anymore, the performance, and everything, I don't know. To Cammy's point, it just feels wrong. Although legally I'm sure it's not wrong. No. So yeah,
Disney made sure of that.
Right, exactly. And I'm sure Mark Hamill got paid something, but as you said, Ryan, there's no standard yet for this, so it's like, what is the fair compensation for it? So I don't know.
And that's honestly, that's for the living ones. for like the dead ones, the past ones, would their families get compensated? I don't know how that works either. I don't know if there's a standard for that.
Right, but they've been doing that a lot longer, actually. Like all the way back to Forrest Gump. They've had, brought in people that, passed and had, them as characters in a movie. So, and using their images. So anyway, all right. But yeah, I don't think we solved anything here, but you at least have some insight into how we feel about it. But and apparently we lost James. I don't know what happened there. But we are going to pause for a promo from another fine podcast. And hopefully when we come back, we'll have James with us.
I'm Mark McCrae, the author of The Best Saturdays of Our Lives. And if you're not listening to our podcast, then you're missing out on amazing interviews with
Larry Houston,
Tom Tatawanovich,
Keone Young,
Michael Swanigan,
Ned Hastings,
Bill Gollier,
Dan Gilvazan,
Rob Lamb,
and so many others.
Kick back and let Dan Klink and I peel back the curtain on the animation industry.
The Best Saturdays of Our Lives podcast can be found on the ESO Network and all podcasting platforms.
And we're back. And like we talked about at the top of the show, we're talking about Supergirl season 6. And we already mentioned that we are a bit of a ways. We're like 4 or 5 months from the actual end of the season when we're recording this. So it's a bit far. For Ryan, though, it's probably only been like a month and a half since he finished watching it because, he's slow like that. But the other thing I'm going to put in as a disclaimer is, for our discussion of the season, that this is the post-COVID season. And like all the other CW shows, I do note that. So there are certain problems that they had to deal with, from the previous season ending early. And obviously there was the extra problem with Supergirl that Melissa Benoist was pregnant, and they had timed things for the pregnancy, and then that got all thrown off because of the COVID and everything. So like they had some things to deal with in the beginning of the season that aren't actually their fault, that they just had to sort of write around and work with. So I'll put that disclaimer out there. But now we're going to tear it a new one. No, now we're going to discuss the season. So, to talk about like that first block of episodes, basically, we have, the season 5 sort of ending, which is just one episode. And then they have the sort of storyline of Kara trapped in the Phantom Zone, and then what everybody else is doing, back on Earth while that's happening. And I'm just sort of curious what everybody's thoughts are of how well they handle not having Kara like with the main group and, the resolution to the previous season and all of that. So let's start with you on this one, Cammie. Like, how did you feel about just that chunk of the season?
I mean, it was slower. It was very obviously disjointed, but it was better than them having her carry a big purse or stand behind a couch for half of the season, as we've certainly seen in many other shows. So yes, I thought that it was actually pretty well done, and both leading up to it and the reintegration of her, they didn't hand wave it away too much. They didn't try to make this like we have to go through this plot point where she's away, for availability reasons. But once she comes back, we ignore the fact that she was gone and try to move on full speed ahead with the season that we would have wanted. So I like that they acknowledge it. As you mentioned, this season was obviously disrupted by COVID. And even though I think at the point that this was filming, there were a lot of adaptations in place, and, we were, the industry was on a road to normalcy slowly but surely at this point. So I think this was actually less impacted than, for example, The Flash. But there are still moments where you can tell a season or a particular episode might be somewhat underpopulated compared to what we would have seen had there not been, cast restrictions or how many people could be there. There were moments where I would have expected hugs or kisses or something like that between characters, and we don't get that because there's less touching. So there's there's kind of a few layers of things happening here that make this a little bit slower and colder, I guess. No pun intended.
Okay. James, what do you think about the sort of, I think it's 6 or 7 episodes of the season?
Yeah. I don't know. I think Cammy nailed a lot of it down, really. It was just because of all the restrictions. It felt kind of disjointed, a little janky, like things weren't super flowing all the time. The division of the characters was definitely awkward as a viewer, because I'm used to seeing all these characters almost always on screen all together. With that, I still enjoyed the storyline that they were telling. I still enjoyed the wrap up from getting cut off in the previous season and being like, no, but that doesn't seem like a logical conclusion. Why did we stop there? And kind of getting through the rest of it was nice. But yeah, it's not my favorite part of the season, but with everything going on, it makes sense why it works the way it worked.
Okay. And Ryan?
Well, okay, so I feel that actually, given the situations, plural situations, that the beginning wasn't as rough as I was expecting. I after the Flash, I was like, okay, this is gonna be bad. I still think it's the weakest part of the season. I still think it was not great at all, but it wasn't as bad as I was really expecting it to. And I will actually give them credit for kind of fairly seamlessly weaving the multi-chaptered seasons into like one flowing arc, one flowing story. Like the Phantom Zone arc flowed pretty well into the next one, and then into the whole Infinity Gauntlet route or whatever they were going. It worked, and so in that sense, I gotta give them credit for that, and I will also give them credit for carrying on Kara's PTSD. Like, she was, for the rest of the season, she had fear of phantoms and of what happened to her there and everything. And so I actually give them credit for that. Now, I recognize this because of the circumstances that made them drag that out, because usually in a CW show, she would have been, if there wasn't pregnancy, if there wasn't COVID, she'd have been in the Phantom Zone for half of an episode or something like that before they invented the technology to get her out. And, so in that respect, I actually think that from a story-wise aspect played better for them. I kind of hated that they, introduced her father and brought him back, and he's gonna save the environment and then disappear like that when it doesn't work the first time. And so I had issues. Go ahead.
What about bringing Magon back and then just having her disappear? And it's like, hey, what? Yes. I could turn to my wife and go, like, where's Magon? Like, she was there when they were dealing with phantoms, and now she's not there. Like, yeah, what happened?
At the end of the season, someone mentions, and I think Brainy mentions, you and Magon's child, and I'm like, oh, Magon, that's right, she was here somewhere.
She's a person that's in this show.
There were some things like that where it was a little disjointed. But yes, you're right. Like, how many times has Barry been like sent away to a realm where no one will ever be able to get to him, and then like half an episode later, it's like, oh yeah, no, we can't have Wally step up and do a show about him or the kids from the future or any of that. We're not gonna do that.
Sisso spent an afternoon and figured out a way to defeat the laws of physics and bend time and space using something that has like a AAA battery to bring Barry back.
Yeah. So I mean, all right. So first off, I think we're kind of glossing over the fact, like, to me, like, that episode, the one singular episode they used to wrap up the previous episode, felt like a whirlwind. Like, that was like, oh my God. Like, and again, I get it. She they were writing around the fact that they had already filmed some footage, but they couldn't bring her back for that first episode. And so it was kind of like, we just got to like wrap things up. She ends up in the Phantom Zone, whatever. But that episode, like, to me, just felt like, wow, like that, like a lot was crammed, because I think that was like 3 episodes of the previous season, what should have been like 3 episodes just crammed into one. But my kind of issue, or I guess what I feel like the Phantoms were such a weak character, or like such a weak idea, as far as like, oh, these Phantoms are getting out and they're converting people into Phantoms and woo. I don't know. I felt like that was like really tedious, especially because like the nature of the Phantom Zone changes, like it seems like every time they bring it up. And it goes from the original depiction of the Phantom Zone, at least, and what I remember from everything DC that I watched or read as a kid, was that it's called the Phantom Zone because when you're there, you're like ethereal, like you can't like interact with things, and you're like a phantom when you're there. Now it's called the Phantom Zone because there are literally creatures called phantoms that live there. It's like, I don't know, it just felt like a kind of,
The next version will just have the Phantom in it, and you have to fight him for eternity.
Billy Zane like putting on the costume like 40 years later.
I would pay to watch that. I would be fine with that, actually.
What, Ryan, you said you never watched it?
No, I said I would pay to watch that.
Oh, you'd pay to watch it. Okay, yeah.
But and then but just take it to the logical conclusion. It's the Phantom, and then of the opera, and like everywhere you can go with this.
Actually, that would probably be more interesting. My wife would definitely have been more into it, but
They made the mistake of trying to have the villains be somewhat comedic at multiple parts in the season. I think they were trying to, and I just didn't buy that. And I think that was what made some of these villains weak, because I want to blame it on their powers or personality, something there. But honestly, anything can be overpowered or underpowered in this show and be hand waved away with good acting, good setup, whatever. But there was something about it where every time they were trying to be kind of quirky or funny, I wasn't buying into it. So I wonder if it was almost a humor struggle.
yeah. But the other thing that I wanted to bring up is after they give us this interesting idea of Lex Ascendant, because he's being honest. And of course they're playing into like the sort of the Trumpism and whatever of him, just like if you say something, if you assert it as this is a good thing that I've done, and you tell it honestly, like a lot of people would be like, hey, I like that. He's a guy that tells it like it is, whatever.
I actually love that.
And then just like have him disappear for like half the season. I was like, actually, I think it would have been more interesting to have the Lex part of the season be that part where Kara wasn't there, and to have everybody else have to deal with Lex, without Kara. And I felt like that would have helped hold the interest, while we didn't have our main lead. I think I would have liked that better than the sort of like besotted Lex that we got in the second half, where it was such a different character than what John Cryer had given us before that. And it was all about, oh, I love her, I must have her, I will do anything for her. And it was just like, oh, this hurts. It hurts to see you like this, man. So I don't know.
It hurt when you realized he was sincere. Like through most of it, I was like, oh, this is a play. This is Lex. He's got a plan. And then no, wait, this is really happening. And then it's just, I felt like all of John Cryer's work as Lex just kind of started draining away.
As an expert over consumer of really bad CW romance, unfortunately, I knew that was real the entire time, and it made it so much worse.
Yeah, John Cryer's like, I spent some time on the set of Riverdale.
Was he shirtless in the rain and just cut?
Wait, but unless he's played high school football, does he really know the highs and the lows of life? I mean,
The epic highs and lows.
Gosh, that meme.
Oh, dang it, Ryan. You just ruined Superman and Lois for me now.
That actually be funny because, like Lex disappears, and it would be funny if the CW had just had him show up on like a bunch of the other shows, like just in the background, not really doing much, just like with like a notebook, like writing stuff down. Like you see him in Riverdale, you see him in like Vampire Diaries and stuff. It's just like writing stuff
They're
down.
basically doing that with John Diggle at the moment. So
that's true.
just happens to be in the area, and he's just like, I was in the area, I heard you could use some help, I have something you might need. And we're like, why are you here, John? I can't talk about it. It's super secret, but we're kind of hinting at a Green Lantern thing, but not a Green Lantern thing. It's a different thing.
In
It's like-
every show's defense, if you had Diggle available to help, wouldn't you need help? Like, don't
That's
we
what I'm
all?
saying.
Well, that's what I've been saying. It's like, yeah, the Diggle appearances have been stupid, but it's Diggle. So I
But-
mean, it's
Right.
I'll take it.
Like they want to get me all in on all CW. Like do that. Like have him show up in Riverdale. Like I'll watch that episode.
Right.
Just because the nerd in me is just like, but what if it's something leading towards a Green Lantern show? I don't want to miss it.
I hear
He's
you need some
suddenly
help
there
with
on like the
football.
modern remake of Nancy Drew, and it's just like, oh, of course, yeah. He and Nancy go way back, honestly.
But see, I still like
that
Nathan.
makes as much sense as when they established that he was like the former lover of Ryan's mom and Batwoman. It was
Oh, God.
that was super random.
This is awkward.
But like, yeah, oh god, yeah, Diggle. But we'll get to we'll get to Diggle. But
Yeah. Just imagine Lex traveling from show to show, like watching, teenagers make out, taking notes, leaning over their shoulder.
Like, he's
So, is this
understudying,
love?
like
Now, does
Oh,
it seem
God.
better in the rain, or is it better without the rain? And do you need the shirt, or is that optional?
Overall, there was this very teen-like quality to what you're originally describing, though, which is,
Yeah.
him being suddenly so romantically wrapped up
Yeah.
in another villain,
He
where
wrote poetry.
right. I just it was difficult to reconcile with a character whose greatest romance was with power.
yeah.
And we had already established that his greatest love of power overrides his, affinity for his family, affinity for his sister, so on and so forth. So it's difficult to imagine a romance being higher than that. And I'm not sure they really sold that well. You can sell a romance that is greater than love of power, greater than love of, destruction or life, greater than, that's possible, but that's a really big ask. And it usually requires several seasons of lead up with a really intricate character, and we just didn't get that here.
Well, yeah, and they tried to hand wave it with, oh, all that happened when he was in the future. And it's like, oh, well, okay, we're not even going to do the work to sell it. It's like, it already happened. Now just
the
deal
biggest
with it.
hand wave.
Right, exactly. And then like, yeah, that was the whole thing of like, oh, that's where Lex has been in the future. Like, it took me a while to figure out like what they were trying to tell us, because it seemed like Lex just showed up again, but then it's like, oh, like they're not, because at first I thought they were saying this is the Lex from the future, but then they were like, oh no, actually the Lex from this time went into the future somehow. We're not going to explain that either, like how he time traveled, and now he's back. And it's like,
Well, he
oh,
could've-
okay.
Honestly, that part didn't help. I just assumed he stole the technology when he was on Brainy's ship, on the Legion's ship.
Oh yeah,
the
that's
previous
true.
season.
Yeah.
But my thing about that, the best part to come out of that was Otis. Just his interactions with. I would pay to see Otis in that show all the time. More. That show should be actually retitled The Otis Show, in my opinion. But because otherwise, Lex was just. Again, maybe it's because we'd never seen his character portrayed that way, but I just felt like it took away from what we had from him, and he was no longer threatening. I liked Nixley, but I did not like whatever what's their celebrity name? What would their Lexley? I don't know what that would be, but yeah, I didn't care for that.
Take that back. Don't ever say it again.
Yeah.
Or say it 3 times and see what happens.
Oh god, don't say it backwards. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. All right, so yeah, let's talk about like everything after the Phantom Zone now, or the. So, all right. So first of all, I've hated what they've done with McGee Spitlick in this series. And granted, the new guy is better than the first guy. When they made him like, this hot, like, guy that wanted to romance Kara, like that was like way worse. But even like this new guy that they have playing McGee Spitlick, he's kind of like, like he doesn't strike me as like the imp character, like the troublemaker, like the thing when I hear Mixie Spitlick, I mean, I've known that character from all the way back in Super Friends when I watched it as a kid. Like he's the troublemaker, and that's the thing. He just seemed like kind of like I'm a guy with a lot of powers and I just sort of hang around, like it's kind of more like a slacker, and every once in a while
you're wrong on that one, Nathan. No, I mean, if Thomas Lennon, the guy who plays him, is phenomenal. Like if you've never seen Reno 911, or he was even in the Oddfellows, but I think he was actually perfect casting. Maybe it's the directing, or maybe I don't know. I don't know, but I felt like he was perfect.
I go back to Superman the animated series. They should have done Gilbert Gottfried. That's the guy. If you've ever seen the Superman the animated series version of Mixie, that's the version.
So we get Gilbert Gottfried and Otis.
And I show up. Just like, oh my god.
That's the thing. The whole point of the episode, like where he shows up, is that he annoys Superman to no end. And I'm like, Gilbert Gottfried, that was perfect.
Just screaming in his ear for like an hour.
Exactly.
I would sign on to that if I can get Gilbert Gottfried and Otis in the same scene. I don't know why, but that would work for me.
And every time Lex Luthor appears, he shows up like Kramer from Seinfeld through a doorway.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. All right, but yeah, so yeah, I mean, but then again, it's another character that they just forgot about. Like they put him in like the little ball, and then like he's gone. Like we don't really talk about the fact that he's in the
even by the end, it's not like, is he free now? Is he not? No. Okay,
yes, he's
all
free. Right. It's just another drop like thing from this season where it's like a lot of stuff just kind of happened and then was done and then never got resolution.
I think it was a pacing issue, but like a lot of pacing issues, I can see how it's kind of a lose-lose either way. Mm-hmm. Either you drop a mid-tier storyline that wasn't really engaging people that much, or you continue it, play it out to its end, and it remains a mid-tier storyline, but we just got too much of it.
Yeah, all that I felt was like in the last episode, he should have been there, like as far as like just to show that, hey, he's out, he's better. We got him, restored him or whatever.
But I feel like they did that with a couple of different things. It wasn't just it was Mixley. It was also like Lex going to the future. Like I said, and then there was one episode where like Dreamer threw out a line. I was like, I went and I searched and I couldn't find it. And I was like, wait, did you? Did I see this? And it seems like there were like multiple things that happened off screen. And I don't know if that's because, COVID, we were missing episodes or what, but like there were multiple points where I just had to pause and think, did I fall asleep during that, or did that just not happen? And yeah, that was one of them,
No.
I don't remember what it was, but I remember Dreamer said, yeah, I went, it was probably one of the totems. And she's like, yeah, I went and I tried to track it down. But she made it sound like she and Brainy went on this like whole adventure. Oh, yeah, that was the best 2 episodes, the time travel, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah. But yeah, there were a couple of times where I thought they must have had an episode that I missed where Dreamer went off and did something.
Yeah. Oh, that's fair. I mean, we kind of glossed over the time travel episodes when we were talking about the first block, because I again, my poor memory, I'm thinking of the fact that it was just like phantoms getting out of the phantom zone. Ooh, like was the whole thing. But you're right. No, those 2 episodes were fun.
Yeah. And honestly, I didn't miss any. It was just Brainy and Dreamer, and I didn't miss anyone else, The casting for young Kara was kind of bad, but otherwise those 2 episodes were probably my favorite of the season.
Yeah, I felt like the young Cat Grant was like a bridge too far, but like she played it well. I just felt like this just seems like really far-fetched that we have a young Cat Grant here.
Have you seen any other CW show?
Yeah, but at that point, that's when I knew we're going to see Cat by the end of the season. I'm like, if they're bringing back Cat Grant, even as this young character and reminding us about Cat Grant, I'm like, that we're going to see her by the end.
I never needed to be reminded. I am always thinking of Cat Grant.
That's fair.
Yeah,
That's fair. I can't say how many times I've just been like, I wish Cat Grant was still in charge of Catco. Why?
Yes.
Why is she not still in charge of Catco?
Yes. Did somebody not bribe her enough? Like, how much did we offer? Did somebody offer to sell a soul or 2? I don't know.
Well, and that was like one of my issues with the season was specifically like everything at like having to do with Catco. I know what they were going for in like the whole storyline that they were going through with what's his name, the journalist dude.
Oh, William.
And like the integrity of journalism and all that. And
yeah, because we know we weren't going to get it from Kara.
No,
they keep
like
forgetting is a journalist.
That Pulitzer Prize winning journalist.
Actually, when she quit, that was like one of the best things about this season. I was like, thank you, because you weren't willing to do the job. I'm glad to see you quit, because I mean, I would have preferred for her to be a journalist, but if you're not going to be a journalist, then quit.
I know, it's like you've won one award, but how much do you actually ever write? Because you're doing superhero stuff all the time. But yeah, no, I just did not like the lady who was in charge of Catco. Like I didn't like
Andrea.
Thank you. Yeah.
I didn't like her as the weird super villain thingy that they established in the previous season. I didn't like her in this season. I didn't feel like they knew what to do with her. So that's why they were like, oh, she suddenly doesn't care about ethics and journalism at all.
Yeah,
we'll
she
just
went
have that
from just being like somebody who was like, hey, let's make this clickbaity, to I am actually an evil person that doesn't care about anything, so long as I get viewers, like.
Because I think the villains were weak, I think they were using her character to just create more villainy, right? Just to rebalance the system. And here's my problem with that. A, it kind of came out of nowhere. B, her whole setup was that she was sort of a morally gray character originally. She was sort of living in this in between where she could kind of be an irritant, but she wasn't like full on bad. And I think we needed more of that irritant. We needed more of that character that is not necessarily clearly good or bad, but, may be irritating and opposing this Pollyanna heroism that Supergirl has. Furthermore, I found it unrealistic that she wasn't hooking up with Lena Luthor. So that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me.
Yeah, because like I kind of liked Andrea last season. I was, like you say, she was morally gray. You get the fact that she was being coerced into a lot of the bad things that she was doing, and so it was like, yeah, I mean, she's someone that cares about profit and might be a little sloppy on the journalism to get clicks, but not like somebody who is literally like, yes, like you must go in, you must do dirty tactics, you must, do things that are unethical and, all that kind of stuff. And I order you to do that, William. Like that kind of stuff where it's just like, oh, like you've taken a nuanced character and taken away the nuance.
I think I'm in the minority here, because while I didn't care for her character or storyline, I didn't think it was necessary. But maybe she's like the best they could get because of COVID or whatever. I actually found her reasoning believable. I mean, she lost basically her family fortune, the entire company. She was in disgrace in the eyes of her father, even though she like basically robbed him blind. And all she had left was Catco. So she had to rebuild. Catco needed to be a success or she was a failure. And so that's kind of what I got, that she was willing to do this was her last chance, is the impression I got from her, and she was willing to do anything to make it work. She wasn't evil, she was just unethically ambitious. It came across to the point where she basically, by pushing that whole thing, by publishing Lex's journal. I will say also that I feel like she was, well, I don't think she was necessary. I feel like they kind of had to have her at the same time, if that makes sense, because otherwise they were in danger of going down the whole Lena Luthor. She's a Luthor. She's going to be evil. It's going to happen. You can't have a Luthor in a story without them ultimately being the bad guy. It happened in Smallville. It happens in every Superman telling ever. And so I was glad that they just finally decided this season, like, no, we did that. We played with that. We played with Lena being the villain. And now we decide she's going to be good from now on. And while, yes, suddenly she's turning back into, Morgana from Merlin, of her, and so that required them to have Andrea be kind of villainous.
Okay, I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, I don't know. I just felt like, to me, like they were taking it a bit too far with the character.
Well, and I guess hearing now what you're saying, Ryan, it makes sense with William's story, because of what they wanted William to be, which is ultimately his tragedy, right? It's this guy is the most morally right guy, and that's why he's such a good match to Kara because they're both fairly really morally right people. Like they always want to do the morally right thing. So then when we have the events happen to William, in which he's shot and everything, that makes William's character so much more tragic, because just before that is when he stands up to her and he goes, listen, I will not compromise ethics. I will not compromise myself. Like, I believe in ethical journalism. I believe in doing the right thing no matter what. And I'm not going to do this for you, period. And now they've set him up. He's the perfect pariah that the audience will rally around when that happens, because it's like, no, he's the most ethically justifiable person right now. Why?
When you said the character that they want William to be, I was snickering just because they clearly wanted him to be Kara's love interest. But I love the fact that as soon as Kara's back, they're like, since it's the last season, we don't want to do that, like go down that route.
He doesn't get to have love.
Pull that story back and be like, he's just like, oh, I met somebody else. And it's like, and then they just completely drop it. We never meet the somebody else. We don't know what's going on, but it's just
what
like
they lack in quality when it comes to romance, they make up for inconsistency when it comes to romance.
She never gets love.
I will say, I think you nailed it, that Andrea Rojas in the last season, it basically exists to make William look good.
Yeah. That's probably true. Yeah.
Hey, and we found out he's a cook. We found out he's an excellent pastry cook. So,
Well, look, if every kind of virtue they could put on William, he was good with kids, he was a cook, like they made him out because they knew they were going to kill him. Like once they decided he wasn't going to be Kara's love interest, it's like, we're killing him off.
We're going to make you love this guy and then hate us.
He all but rescued kittens from a tree.
Yes. Like, you know what? Make him
into
diggle.
a burning building for a puppy.
He shows up at their headquarters. What do they call it? Their lair? I don't know.
The watchtower.
Watchtower. Do they call it the watchtower?
Yeah, I think they do.
Okay. Anyway, he just shows up with like just kittens in his arms, just like.
Hello, I found
There's
these
a rainbow
kittens.
behind him.
Somebody was drowning, and then I just happened to have the time to bake these crumpets that are amazing.
He
It's a
smiles.
recipe I got from an old woman that I helped across the street.
Yeah, exactly. On my way to teach blind orphans.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, you guys need this like magic, right? Well, I just helped this old lady cross the street. Turns out she has this book of magic here. Oh man. Yeah, but anyway, yes. I mean, I didn't mind William. I thought that it definitely worked better to just focus on him as a journalist rather than, because I like last season I kept groaning every time he was on screen because I was just like, we're forcing a love story in for Kara where it doesn't need to be there. And so like it was a lot better once they took that off the table. I felt a lot more positively about William as a character. And I was able to just go like, okay, William's fine. And while his death didn't really surprise me because it seemed like, okay, this is why we've been building him up all this time, but it felt natural. It felt part of the narrative because of everything that had been going on. And it made sure to show that Lex is still, we let's remind everyone how ruthless Lex is, so he's just going to kill, like, because he had left and then he comes back and goes like, oh, by the way, and just shoots him, or I forgot to do something. I can't remember what he says exactly, but he comes back and shoots him.
Very mafia boss.
They did to William what we expected them to do to Diggle for all 7 seasons of Arrow.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Diggle and Jesse Martin from The Flash. Yes. Like I keep like thinking like, how has he survived all this time? Because I thought for sure he was going to be like the season 1 ender death. And as he's dying, like tell Barry, don't let Iris ever know. And he falls Oh, that first season was hilarious for the don't tell Iris stuff. Everyone else knows, but don't tell Iris. But anyway,
CW logic.
Yeah. All right, so we kind of danced around it a little bit. This season we tried really hard in the last few episodes to like sort of promote some of the characters that we've had. I felt like if you're on the last season, it's kind of a little late to just kind of be like, hey, Lena, by the way, guess what? you're a witch, and it's like, why are we doing this in the second half of the final season? Or the whole thing where it's like, oh, by the way, oh crap, what is her name? Jimmy's sister. Alex's love interest.
Kelly.
Oh, Kelly. Yeah. So Kelly, like, by the way, you're the new, because we really needed a guardian. So now you can be the new guardian.
That's what this show was lacking. Another hero.
A shinier hero.
And see, here's the thing. All right. So here's like my sort of thoughts here. First of all, we've all made fun of Guardian here. I don't think I need to like give the background on that. And it's like, okay, fine. Now you've made Guardian a female character instead of a male character, but it's still a fairly useless idea. But the problem with Lena is that we didn't need to go there. She was already like the smartest person on Earth. I mean, they already kind of made it like Lex is also already a little envious of her and how smart she is, and it's just her own stuff that like holds her back. So it's like she's already the smartest person on Earth, but we need to give her magic too. Like, I don't know. I mean, I just felt like what is the point of this storyline? Like, why are we going here? Like, couldn't she have just like invented crap that did the same thing as what her magic was? You get what I'm saying? Like, it's just
if they wanted to give her like a Lena centric place where she had a new level of autonomy and power, they should have had her carry the first half of the season in Kara's absence.
Maybe, yeah.
She should have just fully taken over the team and taken on all of Kara's responsibilities and had this whole thing where she is trying to like be the ethical and moral center that Kara previously was. There were ways they could have done this where she's trying to get in Kara's mind, because the whole, premise was that she was trying to get in Kara's mind and she understands Kara better than they're best friends, blah, 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 all of that, right? That is a way they could have had her do this without separating her off from the rest of the team. The story that we saw with her, figuring out she's a witch or whatever, I loved it because honestly, I think they could write crap and she would still be able to deliver it wonderfully. She's great, but this was a season 2, maybe season 3 storyline. This is not a final season storyline, and they knew that.
Yeah, it just felt like trying to do something that you already have limited time. It's your last season. Like, spend it doing more. Like, don't just take like, oh, let's do a character centric thing for something that like she already has enough science that she could do all the things she did with magic, but with science. And it's like, but like taking a leadership role, that would actually be development, and that would have been interesting.
I mean, this is what I think they could have done, because CW is owned by Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers owns the movie franchise Harry Potter. So Hagrid shows up and he's like, Lena, you're a witch. She's like, what? And then they go to Hogwarts, and then we just spin off a whole new like mixed universe.
Oh my God. I mean, that's what they wanted.
Okay, so
like suddenly Lena's showing up on Vampire Diaries and Legacy.
She's following
and all those.
Lex with his notebook.
The aspects of what they did with that storyline, though, personally for Lena, I did like the development of like more about her mom, who she didn't really have a lot of great memories of, and like that connection back to that. Again, I agree with what Cammie said. That should have been something that was like season 2, season 3. But I do appreciate we get just, again, anything that develops Lena more, because I do just like her personal life story more than her interaction with the heroes 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, so don't get me wrong. Having Lena learn about her mother is fine. I just think the end point of all that it gives us is that, oh, by the way, you have like what Cammie was talking about, something that maybe would make Lena more assertive, more confident in herself, something that would cause her to like sort of step up and be like, hey, like I've been afraid of my own, like genius, but I should be. And learning something like that from her following her mother's journey might have been like a better like way to go with it. But I just felt like that was a plot that just didn't need to be there.
My take on it is recognizing that, because I watched Merlin and she played Morgana on Merlin, I kind of hated going this route with her. That aside, it just felt wrong to introduce the concept of her becoming like a grand level, magician or wizard or whatever at this stage. Maybe if they'd done it in season 2 or 3 and they built up to it over time, it would have been. Now, granted, we're talking the CW, you're talking Supergirl, so obviously you have to stretch, incredulity and your disbelief to the breaking point. But I felt like if they wanted to do an arc with her, why not have her like use science to explore like the 5th dimension, or maybe even have her travel back to the Phantom Zone, and she could have gained all the tools she needs to do exactly what she did that way. But
well,
Just
especially when we
undermines
find
like her stances and interests as well. It undermines what her natural, power was as a very smart, sciencey businesswoman. It's like it's kind of this weird trope where, when you have like tough cop who has to acknowledge that feelings matter, or sciencey woman has to suddenly realize that there's a magical world, or what. It's that sort of thing where it's like this woman is self-assured, so we're bringing in something she doesn't believe in to sort of shake her up and let her know that everything she thought might be wrong. And I just don't like seeing strong female characters undermined that way sometimes.
Well, and frankly,
they scullied her like X-Files.
And frankly, I think it's a better message anyway to have a strong sciencey businesswoman character. Like, if you want, like, this is a great character for like girls watching the show or whatever to be like, because you can't be Supergirl, right? Like, you're not going to develop powers and fly around, but you could develop your technical skills, and you could, start a business, and you could do that kind of stuff. So like Lena's actually, since they've built up the fact that like, even though Lena's sort of like flirted with, sort of like dark thoughts and whatever, that she's not a bad person, it's kind of like Lena is actually a role model type character, but instead it's like, oh, now we're gonna give her magical powers. It's like, okay, well, kids are not gonna do that either. So it's, I don't know. I felt like it undercut what made her like interesting.
Well, they directly undermine her through Lex, because we see that Lex makes technology that works with 5th dimensional energy and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, where we've established previously she's smarter than Lex. Why couldn't she make this, but Lex could do it? Instead, Lena needed to go find out, Hogwarts is a real place, and she can learn how to be Dumbledore powerful in a matter of weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So how do we feel about, we've already talked about Diggle. What I call the Diggle cinematic universe should be the new name for the Arrowverse. So, and it's great that Diggle can just show up, right? Like,
he's the most consistent show up.
Right. Well, that's, I mean, well, since he, like, now that Stephen Amell isn't part of the Arrowverse anymore, like, Diggle is like the OG, like the oldest character they have, as part of the whole universe. And David Ramsey's directing for all the shows, and so like he's around, and so it makes sense that like he can just pop up anywhere, and I think that's kind of cool. But when they set up the idea that this particular season, there was going to be a Diggle story arc where he appears in all the shows, and there was going to be a story that developed, and I watched as he showed up in Batwoman, Superman and Lois, The Flash, and I'm like, man, this doesn't really seem to be an arc. This just seems like random events. I'm like, Supergirl's gonna have to bring it all home, because that's the last one. That's the one where we're gonna see like what all this was leading towards. And I was expecting, like everybody else, because there was a glowing green box that, and Supergirl's an alien, and it was like, he's gonna reveal, I have this ring. And then maybe either Supergirl or Brainy or one of them would tell him about the Lantern Corps or something like that. And like, that was going to be like what, I figured he would do something else on the show to help them, but it was going to be like as part of a thing of teaching him like what this ring was. Well, we get to our Supergirl episode, and it's basically, hey, Kelly, you want to be Guardian? And that's like all it is. It's like I feel like they completely wasted the Diggle appearances this year, and we get him for the let's bring back Guardian episode, because we really needed to have like without Guardian, the team was just like, we have Martians. It's a full
superhero recall. We need every hero that's ever showed up in Supergirl.
I don't get this need of all these shows to make everyone who's on the team superpowered, to have abilities. Why wasn't it just enough for Kelly to be part of the team and be a good psychotherapist or whatever she did in her day job.
Honestly, they undervalue mental health in all these, like not just the superhero shows, like sci-fi shows. Like when they put counselors on starships and Star Trek, like they should have a counselor on the ship because they deal with messed up stuff, and so having a psychologist that just works with them like makes sense to me.
Or just like an idiot like me who's just like, I have nothing to contribute, but I stumbled into here, and this is a cool place. This is great. Like I have ideas, but none of them are useful.
I mean, I don't know. They've done that since with Win, and then like, Win's. I don't know. They've done it from the beginning of Jimmy turning him into Guardian. It's unnecessary, and I don't even think you can make the argument, the representation argument. This season went full core, like they knew this was their last season, so they went for all the causes, which I'm fine with, but there was a lot. I mean, it seemed like from environmentalism to extremism and politics to representation. I mean, I was getting whiplash every now and then from trying to figure out, what the moral of the story was.
I also had a problem with the fact that they had to drag Kara down to build Kelly up, because suddenly Kara, who Kara became I don't care about what's happening to those people because I'm thinking of higher things and things that I'm saving the world. I don't need to work. That's not Kara. But that in 5 seasons of Kara, that has never been her attitude. Kara overstresses about saving everybody, like saving the kitten as well as saving the world. Like, she wouldn't just be like, oh, I can't be bothered with those people in that neighborhood over there. Like, and then Kelly having to teach her a lesson. I don't know. I felt that was a little.
It's also a different kind of depowering as well. So if you have, we saw, for example, take Arrow. Every single time Arrow was being used to spin off a new hero, suddenly Oliver couldn't throw a punch without a team behind him, right? He was not as strong as what he had previously been because some other hero needed to look good. But you can come back from that. Next week, he could come back and suddenly, be doing all these trick arrows and be back to full power again. It's a different kind of undercut when you have somebody like Kara, who her whole thing is that she is extremely, solid on her morals and ethics. She is absolutely our Pollyanna hero. And I'm not saying that with anything but respect, truly. Yeah. So when it's suddenly like, oh, she has this blind spot and she isn't aware of, the privilege distribution for, this, that, or the other. It's just kind of it's not the most tasteful way, I think, to approach what is a very real, serious, it is something we all, any of us with a conscience care about, right? But that's not how you tell it in this story, because you're taking an alien like Kara with great love for humanity and you're undercutting one of her core values in order to prop up a new hero who otherwise we would have loved if she had been introduced in a way that didn't undervalue the ethics of our heroine. That it was a struggle. And this show has definitely been very on the nose and not subtle on every kind of social issue. And to an extent, I'll kind of mock it, but I don't mind because I'm there, I'm with you, we're on the same side. I just think maybe you could be a little more subtle, but we're on the same side. I get it. Put a big mean orange guy every season. Whatever, it's fine. But in this season, it was all of these issues that are actually very serious and I'm very I care about very much are 30 seconds in an episode and suddenly we're on to the next one. And that just kind of, I wish they had picked one and done it really well. And for a show that their bread and butter is this sort of, I wish there was a less cheesy way to say it, but sort of this girl power thing in the truest, purest, nicest form. I wish that had been the one issue they chose to do very well. And if that meant maybe, unfortunately, we don't get to environmentalism, I'm a vegan. I give you permission to leave that out of this season. I'll carry that flag for you. I wish they had done the girl power a little better.
Yeah. No, it makes that. Yeah.
But I mean, I think it may have even been beyond that, but there was a larger pattern of this. it seems like they made Kara like apologize like 5 times this season. Like when they dropped the shield down around the city, she had to go to National City on camera and say, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake." And there just seemed to be this effort to undermine her and destroy her confidence in herself. And maybe this was maybe I'm not giving enough credit. Maybe this was an aspect of her time in the Phantom Zone and her PTSD. In which case, looking at it in that light kind of makes sense. But
well,
otherwise,
I felt like it was almost a course correction, but it might have been an overcorrection, because we've talked before about how the series always makes Kara right about it. Like Kara is always right, and about how that was sometimes problematic. That it's like, a hero can be wrong sometimes, and like that's an interesting storyline as well. Like you don't have to make it where like Kara is perfect, right? But yeah, it seemed like it was so much in just one season where it was like she would make a mistake and she would have to apologize and stuff like that, whereas like, all right, like I want her to be able to do that and to be wrong sometimes, but it doesn't have to be like a bunch of times all in a row.
Yeah.
And it's also, I mean, not that necessarily want them. It also just seems like everyone immediately jumped to the wrong conclusion. Like, for instance, if I saw a giant laser shooting from space and I saw Supergirl fly up and intercept it, my first thought is that she's saving the city. It's not going to be she's trying to steal the power of the sun to power herself up to fight a villain. So like I just don't get, like, why did you do this, Supergirl? Why did you betray us like this? I'd be like, thank you for stopping the giant laser from destroying my home. So I don't know. It just seemed like everyone already just was ready to assume the worst.
Public humility aspect of it, like a PR public humility aspect that permeated a couple storylines this season that I just don't see in other times when, not to make this a sexism thing, but this is a show about a female superhero, and contrast with how male superheroes are. You see Barry, Oliver, every male superhero out there mess up, and they may be contrite, but they very rarely have to like show public humility in order to improve their PR, or they had really good intentions and they care about humanity, but they didn't use the exact correct approach or priority to care about humanity, so they must be publicly contrite, as if we didn't already know that they are on our side and on the same side and are a good person. There was something about being seen as a good person that kind of permeated this season that was a little uncomfortable, but maybe reflective of current culture. I don't know. Again, with this, I am I'm a bleeding feminist here, vegan, drinking dandelion tea. I'm on your side. I just wish we had gone about it a different way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, because like the direct comparison would be like Superman. I mean, I've been watching Superman and Lois. He causes a lot of property destruction in Smallville, like a whole lot. I've never seen him apologize for any of it, not one time. And neither have I seen the public been like, Superman just destroyed the grocery store and half of that block over there. We're screwed, guys. And then be like, he needs to apologize.
Well, all right. I will say this though, like Supergirl, I think has been more aware of media as a series than a lot of them. Like even to the point of like, the thing with like Brainy making commercials for like people to eat their vegetables and stuff this season, which I thought was actually kind of funny. But going back to like I think it was season 4, where like they addressed the property damage thing in Supergirl and how that could radicalize like, a guy that was kind of like, yeah, his dad was kind of a racist, but he kind of wasn't a racist, but he kind of lived with that kind of rhetoric in his house. But then when like, oh, like this property destruction affects him, and when like issues like affect him, then suddenly he became like someone who became very anti-alien. And so like Supergirl, like I think has been more cognizant of that kind of stuff than the other shows have been from the beginning, even when it wasn't like focused on her specifically. Like I think that they are a little more focused on like sort of cultural impacts and stuff than say Superman and Lois. So again, I think it might be just about the writers on Supergirl being more sort of like thinking about things in those terms. But yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about our totems and Nixley. So it seems like somebody is like, crap, we can't do like, since crisis, COVID's happened right after crisis, we set up these paragons, so instead we're gonna like take the same qualities and make them totems. Because it was like, wait a minute, these totems, those are the same thing. Like there's a totem of courage and there's a paragon of courage, and all that stuff. Except I think they turned one of them into dreams, where there wasn't like a paragon of dreams, but there was a totem of dreams. I forget which one they subtracted from the paragons, but anyway, I looked it up at one point. Like, so it becomes a quest type storyline. Oh, let's assemble, like grab all these things before the bad guys do, and all that kind of stuff. Like, how did that, with the idea that the whole romance thing between Lex and Nixley was going on, like, how did you feel about that? How did you feel about Nixley's character? Let's start with you on this one, Ryan.
I'll go backwards there. I liked Nixley, actually. I did. I liked her. I liked her and Mitch. For some reason, I thought they were great together. And I even I liked her story. I mean, like, I was tuning, like, I don't know why she had to destroy Earth to do it, but I was rooting for her to get back to the fifth dimension and go to town on everyone who did her wrong. I mean, they deserved it. So in that sense, and I mean, she didn't trapped in the Phantom Zone for what, thousands of years or whatever. I mean, that's gonna mess you up. So I was kind of all team Nixley up until she left the Phantom Zone. I mean, everything I could write it off as a little bit crazy. And I also loved, you'd see that while she was driven mad for her quest for vengeance, she was still somewhere within her like a good human being. Like, she was not going to let Lex kill Esme, who, by the way, we're going to talk about Esme later. But I felt like she was, for like a one season villain, I think she had a lot more depth than what they usually create. Maybe it's just the way she was portrayed, but Nixley loved the totem quest. I don't know. Why did it have to be the last season? Like, I could have overlooked it if it was season 4, season 5, or if there was going to be a season 7 or season 8. But like, to go out on that, it was rough. Honestly, I'll give them at least credit for, I really expected all the totems to just coincidentally be in National City, and only 2 of them were. So that's impressive. I'm pretty sure the other 5 were still in Europe, but whatever.
No, I mean, well, yeah, there's some sort of mystical like object, this Allstone. Was broken into pieces, but all the pieces are on Earth. Like, we're dealing with other dimensions and other worlds and planets. It's like they're not scattered throughout space. They're not scattered throughout dimensions.
I think they addressed that. I actually think they said that, like, there was an Allstone, a totem for each virtue on every planet or something like that. So my thought there was,
I might have forgotten that.
Yeah, you can assemble the Allstone on any planet. Like, why hasn't it been done by now? But
right,
that's kind of what I was assuming.
Well, the other thing that I thought was really weak is that Lex kept insisting that in the future you get the Allstone, but you get it the wrong way. It's like, what's the wrong way? Explain how you get it the wrong way, and why that like meant that you had to go back in time and help. But like they don't explain any of it. It's just like, again, just like trying to just hand wave everything so that Lex can be there in the situation they want him to be in. And like, you would think if he was coming back from the future also, he would have better information. He even had like a digitized version of the future version of Nixley that he could ask, like, how did you do these things? And so then we can specifically alter the things that need to be altered. But like, it doesn't seem like he gets any like really specific intel. It's just, I have to generically help her. The
moment he came back, it changed everything, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Butterfly wings, Nathan. Butterfly wings.
Problems. All right, so Cammy, what do you think about Nixley, and what do you think about that story?
The search for Horcruxes, you mean?
Yeah.
I understood that they were trying to tie it into their broader, ethical, moral themes this season of, here are all the ways to be bad and here's all the ways to be good, and darkness rises in the light to meet it, essentially. And I liked Mixley. I I really didn't like her storyline with Lex, and it was just unfortunate to me that that was the ending. Had there been some sort of romantic entanglement, whatever, towards the beginning, and she somehow defeats Lex, and then he just doesn't appear for the rest of the season, which actually lines up with what you were proposing, Nathan, which is that he should have been carrying the first part of the season in Kara's absence. If they had just done that as a pacing choice, and she had been able to be her true Mixley self towards the end without being a part of the Lex romance at the end, I think it would have been stronger. Because while the idea of totems can be kind of cheesy, and it is obviously, so easily compared to the Paragon storyline from the crossover, which I didn't care for when that happened either, this was done a slightly better way. And a scavenger hunt type of format is fairly, well, across the universe type of thing, is fairly appropriate given some of the limitations they had in terms of cast and how much can they pack people together and what locations can they show and who can be in what location. That format lends itself well to this. It really was just sort of the order of operations. They PEMDAS wrong. This should not have ended with villain romance being the final villain storyline.
Yeah. James?
I'm upset that they didn't come to the logical conclusion I finally accepted by the end of the season of what this was supposed to be, but they just missed the mark on. We have these totems, and all of these totems are basically the same symbology of the rings for Captain Planet. Like, why didn't we get Captain Planet by the end of this? Or at least like a Power Rangers super fight. Like, we were almost there. Like with the Lex suits and the power of the gems. I was like, why isn't it just morphin time? Like, what is happening? It felt like, I don't know.
James, I would have preferred a Sentai style fight sequence at the end to what we got. So
it just felt it felt like it got so ridiculous. Like, everything they were doing with Nixie and Lex just felt, everything those two did together felt insane. And I agree. I like the Max hit her and Mitch. I thought it worked out. I thought it was a better relationship, or at least more entertaining and interesting than the previous guy who was with Mitch that was the hunter.
Yeah.
Because she's just like, I need you to do a thing for me, but I'm not so cruel that I would murder you, but I'm gonna make it feel like I probably would. So yeah, I liked her character. I like the actress. I thought she just had a lot. It always felt like she was just having fun with the role, which I enjoyed. But yeah, it just, by the time we get to the end with the totem hunt, I was just like, oh, why is this just terrible?
Well, it seems like they keep changing the rules, or they figure out new rules as they're going to. It's one of those things of I don't know. It feels like if you're going to do that, then you need to establish the rules in the beginning and then just just stick with those rules.
Well, and yeah, and it's oh, well, I guess the way we work around this is we destroy hope for everybody, for the whole world. We have to do it. It's the only way. And
watch them turn gray.
It's what? I don't. Okay, sure.
But how else are you going to have that setup where Supergirl can inspire everyone and Tinkerbell them? Clap if you want, Hope to come back. It was Nathan. It was like that scene from Once Upon a Time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you just believe, magic will happen. Yeah. And you got a couple dozen people in New York around a water fountain to believe in magic, and suddenly you can do magic.
Suddenly, yeah. And Supergirl got people to believe that there's hope in the world somehow, despite a fifth dimensional being destroying everything, draining them of all their virtues. Supergirl gives a 3-minute speech,
because she apologized.
It's the same problem that Wonder Woman 1984 had, that the writers really love the word hope, but they don't understand what it means. So it's like, we'll throw the word around, love and hope. Yeah, we'll just throw those words around. But it's like, I don't think you understand what the words mean. And you don't understand that there needs to be basis for these things for people to believe in them. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's just like,
You keep
there are
using that
ways
word.
to
I
make
do
this.
not
You
think
can
it means
make
what you think it
inspirational
means.
characters that inspire hope, but just telling people you need to have hope and hope is good is not like, that doesn't convince anyone of anything.
It's a telling rather than showing.
Right.
If
Wait.
she had done something that was seen and caused, some sort of belief or hope or inspiration, I
Yeah.
think we would have bought into that more, even if it's cheesy. Of course it's cheesy. It's a comic book superhero show. We're willing to suspend disbelief there. It's this big public speech type of situation that was like, don't really care who would have been given this. I wouldn't have bought into it.
And they had an opportunity here, and I thought this was how they were going to go with it, because like for a good portion of the season they were building up to it with the introduction of the Secretary of State of these two countries going to war. And by the way, watching that and the build up to what's happening in Russia Ukraine was really messing with my mind. But they had this moment that I really thought Supergirl, I thought, like, why don't they have a scene where she flies in between two tanks or something like that, and then gives a speech like on a battlefield or whatever. She stops the war before it happens, just before the first shot is fired. That would have been the moment to do that. That would have been more believable or more, at least
I'm imagining
impactful.
her like grabbing a missile in each hand, that like the missiles are going to the other countries, and then they're just holding them while she gives the speech.
Then William gets the shot and it's all good.
Well, her shtick is kind of like pacifism, right? They don't really say pacifism. They don't necessarily take that approach here, but it kind of undercuts a lot. Like pacifist theory kind of undercuts a lot of the decisions that this show makes. It's just kind of watered down to like a general moral and ethics. But Supergirl, you can kind of make the case that she leans pacifist. So when you're bringing up the concept of a war, this idea of like, she loves humanity. She is an alien who comes in and loves humanity. Same thing as Superman. He is an alien who comes in, he falls in love with a human, but he falls in love with humanity. So her getting humans to kind of like love each other and sit around and like do the whole kumbaya thing, that cheesy, but I'm here for it. Like I'm ready. I'm on board, and moral and ethically as a viewer, I'm on board. But like in the context of the story, I'm on board. It's really just the execution of it should have required just a bit more action from her, and especially in a season where action from Supergirl is pretty limited because of the like pregnancy and all that sort of stuff. I just needed a little bit of action shown that would have inspired this like hope, peace, kumbaya thing instead of the speech, personally.
I just think it's hard to imagine like someone who's had literally had their hope drained away from them by magic or whatever to be like inspired by, oh look, here's this 20-something beautiful alien with super abilities telling me all I have to do is hope. Life. It's like, what do you know? It's just I don't know why anyone would necessarily, especially after having spent a whole season tearing her down. Making her apologize again and again and again. It just, I don't know. It just didn't.
It carries the same energy as like that one lady who did the like spoken word poem to Putin.
Yeah. I mean, and well, we see what that did,
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, basically just at that point in time, Kara came across as like an influencer, I mean, she might as well have gotten on TikTok or Instagram or whatever and just,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's how she can continue to do her hard-hitting journalism is through TikTok.
Yeah.
But
she's gonna blog, Nathan. She's gonna blog.
oh God, I hate this. It's because it's like even in the comics, at least for a while, they had Superman quit like the Daily Planet to do a blog, and I'm just like, no, that's not the same thing at all. To like actually be part of a real newspaper and to just like write your feelings on a blog. But all right, whatever.
As somebody who writes a blog ever won a Pulitzer, I don't know if that's ever happened.
Don't ask that question too loud. It'll happen next season of the
if the past
Iris will be the one that wins.
Yeah. I mean, if the past year has taught me anything, is that people with blogs apparently have Nobel Prizes and PhDs in a whole wide range of scientific subjects. So yeah, I can buy it.
Fair. All right, but all right. So yeah, it's like to me, it all culminated in like basically the slap fight between Lex and And then Nixley, that was just like, I was so not invested in just watching them just like hit each other. And it's just like, well, if I can't love you, I will hate you, and blah, 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 you know, like all that stuff. And you know, moment of silence for Lillian Luther, who was brought in just to be killed, and then on her deathbed tell Lena that like she matters and she loves her and all of that, and then die. And it's just like, could we, oh god, like I get that they were trying to do something for Lena, but like again, like last episode, like again, validating Lena, having Lena feel great in the final season, like promoting her is good, but the ways that they were doing it were just like, oh
Right.
man, this
Well, because it's just that moment where it's just like, Lena, you have value. And then just dies. And you're like, oh, now she matters. Got
it was
it.
everything but like then her body just fades away and her clothes like are just left behind like Yoda when he dies. It's like,
Yeah. And that's like, and it's not even like you have value and dice. It's like, I spent your entire life making sure you didn't realize your true potential, but you count, you know? I mean,
and you know, I mean, I get that the whole Luther family is a very complicated relationship, and that was one of the things that in previous seasons had actually been depicted, I thought, really good. I felt like Lillian and Lillian's feelings about Lena and her feelings about Lex and Lex's feelings about Lena and like the sort of triangle there between those three characters had been like developed really well as far as like the sort of love and hate that they all feel for each other was like one of the really interesting like dynamics of the show. And to have it all just kind of like come out like this is just kind of like, oh, that's like really ham-fisted. Like we took away all the nuance again.
You're right. Like, and the very first episode, I think they did the thing where, and I loved it. It was where Lillian told Lex, "You're not going to kill your sister," and he's like, "But she killed me," you know. And the fact that Lex Luthor is not going to do it because his mom tells him not to.
Right.
That was beautiful. You know?
But yeah, I felt it was a weak ending. Like for like I mean, I get that wasn't the actual ending of the episode, but the whole thing of the, you know, the Nixley and Lex are fighting, but then they open up a portal to the Phantom Zone and the Phantoms just go for them and then they go back and whatever. I know there was more to it than that, but I mean,
no, there wasn't. There really wasn't. That was it. You know?
Yeah, it just felt tedious. And but we got to like do some cameos. We had Jimmy come back and he got to do a Guardian pose, and then we had, you know, Win and
Mon-El.
show up and Mon-El, and it's just like, okay, and Mon-El get to flourish his cape because that's what he does. And the cape tricks are the dumbest thing the show ever did.
I just am really happy that we made it an hour and 47 minutes without mentioning Mon-El. I feel really good about us.
All right,
on
but
that
here's
one.
the thing though. I am shocked because I thought for sure, I called it at the beginning of the season, and then, you know, when they killed the whole William thing, is I'm like, the way the season is going to be resolved. And I thought that this was where all the stuff with Kara being sort of ambivalent about her personal life and quitting her job and all that is, at the end, she's going to go to the future with Mon-El. Like, she's going to decide that, you know, in the future I can be, you know, myself. You know, I don't have to like have a secret identity. I can just be part of the Legion, and I love Mon-El, and we're gonna go. And that was the biggest shock to me, is that not how it ended. I thought for sure that was where they were going. And you know, it's cute because she's actually, you know, married to him in real life and blah blah blah, and you know, all that. But like, they didn't do that, and that shocked me.
They went the opposite. And Mon-El said, "This is the last time I'm ever going to come back to the past."
Yep.
And basically saying, "Hey, we will never be together. This is it," you know. So I actually, I give them credit for that. That was pretty commendable. Brave.
Yeah.
In terms of like what, like Kara and being loved, whether that be family love, romantic love, etc. I think for a hero that so obviously needs and thrives off of it, because she is within the, you know, the Superman umbrella of, she is an alien who comes to Earth and falls in love with humans. What a tongue twister. And has to, you know, kind of reconcile this idea to, like, she wants to love and protect them, but they also need to love and protect themselves. And that's kind of how this whole, universe develops for her, for Superman, for any of the, Kryptonians or most heroes kind of in that position. I don't know that they left her with enough love at the end, and it didn't have to be romantic. I personally didn't like Mon-El. I personally didn't like her with most of the I don't think any of the romantic interests that they threw at her, and they kind of, there was just too many and they wouldn't commit to the bid on it, whatever. Honestly, William was probably the best one, but forgettable, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we're in this situation where romance might not be where she's getting her love from. But even with family, you see her sister who, she gets married and she has a kid now and she has all of that, and we just don't see Kara in proximity to them enough. We see some game nights, we see her reconnect with her back in previous seasons. We've seen some scenes with her adoptive parents and so on, but there's just a lack of love considering the number of times they have tried to throw love at her. So we're left with her going off on this like grand new adventure at the end. And I think we're supposed to see her as quite young still at the beginning of her adulthood, going off in search of herself and what she wants, and having this freedom to, be her truest self and not have a fake identity. But I don't know that we're actually left very hopeful that she's going to successfully find love with humanity in whatever form that may be. I mean, she even like her, her best friend is Lena, and that's another place where she can get love. And we don't actually see that much of that this season either. And some of it is logistics, but they kind of wrote themselves into this position in the end, because there were previous seasons where she could have had that. She could have had whatever kind of love with humanity that, they wanted to show. It doesn't mean that the ending was, bad or unhopeful or unloving, but it was the culmination where I think they had to face limitations that were written seasons past.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that, because I was surprised they didn't go with the way that I wanted, or not what I wanted, that I predicted. I still didn't feel very satisfied by the route that they went. And I still find it hilarious that now we've had Oliver Queen come out as the Green Arrow. We've now had Kara come out as Supergirl, and the actual character in the comics who canonically does not have a secret identity, the Flash, is still having a secret identity in the show, or in his show. So I just find that kind of funny that it's like the characters who do have secret identities in the comics, we are having them come out, but not Barry.
He came out as his actual identity, he would have to be prosecuted for years of unethical police conduct and manipulation of journalism. Maybe.
And then all those people that got convicted, they're out.
Right. Locking up people without due process.
Without due process.
And I mean, I don't know what the statute
prison
of limitations is on time travel and changing the past, but I feel like there's probably, that's got to be like illegal in some jurisdictions.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, that's the other thing from the last. Well, there's a few more things from the last episode I want to talk about, but like the whole idea that we just go to Brainy, who's like, "Hey, you know what? I've been watching Barry for a while, and I'm changing time. I don't care anymore." Like, we're supposed to not care about it because Brainy's from the future, but if you look at it from the point of view of people living in his time, what Brainy is doing in the end is basically the stuff we're always saying, Barry is horrible for doing. He's just like, "Oh, you know what? I'm not supposed to stay here, and yeah, they need me in the future, but screw them. I don't care anymore."
Well, and two questions on that note. Dealing with the time, it's like, okay, how is Gideon from DC's Legends of Tomorrow not gone nuts about all the time aberrations that any of these people have created? How are the legends not just beating up superheroes? How's that not happening?
Actually, that would be funny if that was like an episode of The Flash, like Barry, has another one of his genius plans to go back in time, and then it's like the legends are there, and it's like, no, you're not gonna do this anymore, Barry. That would actually be a fun way of dealing with it for once.
And with the new Speed Force, there's a time god.
Right.
How is that guy not just like, all of you, just stop messing with time?
I mean, apparently it's a direct connection between when the exact moment in the Legion and Supergirl, because like literally she gives a speech and then the Legion shows up and says, "We heard your speech." It should have been in the books,
Right.
I mean, but you just
every child learns the speech, like
Change the future.
in school.
Yeah.
No, that frustrated me because it's like it's okay to have a tragic romance, right? Like it's okay for it to be like, okay, Dreamy and Brainy were together. They always knew it should, wasn't smart, but then in the end he's got to go back to the future and it's okay. Like that's it. It's a tragic, but it's like, oh no, like, CW, we want to have happy endings. So it's like happy endings.
And it's such a direct like contradiction of like how time supposedly worked, because Brainy comes from a future where he already knows of Dreamer.
Right.
He knows about an entire life that she has had, and so
without
it's just
him.
Without him, it's just like, yeah, screw that.
Well, and then they're saying like even like he's needed to help the Kaluans in the future. So it's like not only like even taking time travel off the table. He's also just like, I don't care about helping my people.
He's doomed his whole species of people.
I don't care about them.
What they ever do for him,
Yeah, like it just it does. It feels wonky and weird. I'm with you. I could have done completely with tragic love story where it's just like, we can't be together. And honestly, I think it would have made Dreamer a stronger character for the long run. Where it's just like, like she had a great love and it was gone, but that person helped her get to where she is and become the hero she was meant to be for the future. That would have been just fine. That would have been perfect. But
and it's not like it's not like it's like a dark ending because Kelly and Alex get together and we get told that Jean and Magon are going to get together, so it's like you win some, you lose some, it's like everything has to like go in the positive direction. So I don't know, I just felt like that again because I'm traumatized by the Flash and Barry's like sort of like cavalier episode attitude towards changing time. But it's like every time changing time is brought up in another show, I'm like, no, don't do it.
Guys, I'm never going to travel through time and change anything ever again. Immediate.
I would have been just satisfied with Dreamer going to the future with Brainy. I mean, she asked, I think that would have satisfied all of it. Like, then it's kind of a mystery.
Except that we know that Dreamer has a descendant that's part of the Legion. That's one of the things Brainy said in the very beginning. So, I mean, like, does that person just fade away?
There you go.
I don't know. That's kind of mean.
Now it's a half Kaluan, half whatever species her people are with a dream whip. So it's a Kaluan with a dream whip.
Oh God, don't get me started on the dream powers.
Again, this would have involved more time than they had, but fine. They could have had Dreamer go to the future with Brainy and then have her pass the mantle to her sister. Like, once she's gone, maybe her sister becomes the Dreamer like she always thought she was going to be, or something like that.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
That's a really interesting idea. I think we see certain characters care more about the implication of time travel and the effects of time travel than others, which can be kind of frustrating. But ultimately, with Nia being such a good person, it makes sense that she cares quite a bit about the potential downsides of time travel, and likewise Brainy, I guess, to an extent. What becomes, I guess, a little bit frustrating is we see so many characters get happy endings, except for like in terms of like being with somebody and having like a family and a partner, blah blah blah, except for Kara, and we're still given this sort of like a little bit of an empty girl boss message of like she doesn't need somebody to be complete and be happy, but like at the same time, the entire premise is that she's supposed to be in love with humanity, and with Superman that comes in the form of being in love with a human, Lois, and we just don't see that personal connection for Kara, and I think that's a struggle when literally everyone else is pairing off after prom type of.
I don't know. There's one person that loves Kara more than everybody else. I'm certain of it, and that's Cat Grant.
You know what? You're so right. I
I
cannot argue.
Wonderful. I mean, all right, but we're going to talk about Kat in a second. I just want to say, just to see off of what Cammy was saying, though, like, yeah, like I've been one of the biggest advocates for the series not pairing Kara off, because I think it's great for her to have some time, like as a single character, you know, to just not have like the show like bogged down with romantic subplots, and you know, to show that hey, it's okay if like you don't have to have a boyfriend constantly, like, you know, find the right person, don't feel like you always need somebody right now, like kind of thing. And you know, but then yeah, by the end, I thought that she would have somebody at the end, you know. I felt like that would be, you know, like a nice thing, because you know, a lot of people want, I mean, it's certainly way more common than people who don't have any romantic feelings. You know, most people want to have a romantic pairing in their life. So, you know, I mean, it's like, yeah, it's part of a happy ending for our main character, you know, like, I mean, have her find somebody.
I would have been happy if she went to Argo City and her father's alive, her mother's alive, they're reunited. Why didn't she go, you know, stay with her parents for a little while? Like
okay, we were talking about romantic stuff, and you're like, her father's alive, and I'm like,
it's another love.
Where are you going with this, man?
But first off, there are other, you know, Kryptonians there as well, so anything could have happened. But the point is, like, you know, every millennial moves back in with their parents at some point in time. So, you know, this is where it should have ended. You know?
Well, that's fair. I mean, yeah, I mean, I was thinking she was going to go into the future, but yeah, also going to Argo City would be another way where it would be like, yeah, I don't have to like pretend there, but I can just be myself. And so, yeah. But yeah, instead we have her like basically like, I mean, I knew when she did like the courage stone or whatever, the courage totem, and it was like, it like went back to the first episode and it was saying she didn't have courage. I was like, I instantly knew what it was trying to tell her. I was like, it was saying she should have revealed her identity, like she should have been like out and proud basically, and not like concealed who she was. And so yeah, like it took her a very long time to figure that out, but I was like, oh, I know where this is going. But yeah, Kat, we had Kat. How much did you squee, James?
A lot. I love Kat Grant. Like, okay, so here's the thing.
I mean, it's an obvious green screen. They just had her like go to like somewhere in LA, and just like we put a bed on a set and there's a green screen, you're on the beach, pretend.
Like so the funny thing is like I have like a mini crush on Callista Flockhart.
Okay.
Because when I was younger,
miniature, just small,
yeah,
tiny,
just a little bit. It's not as big as my crush for Carl Urban. Like, I love Carl. But I was just like, you know, my mom had me watch Ally McBeal with her. Like, my mom, that was the show my mom always watched, and so I watched her a lot on that. And it was like, I never saw her in anything after Ally McBeal ended, and I was like, oh. And then, you know, it's like, oh, she married
Indiana Jones.
Solo, and I was just like, oh, okay, is she doing anything else? And like, just never saw her anything, and I've just loved her since day one of Supergirl. Like, seeing Callista Flockhart on screen, being Kat Grant, like really enveloping the character so well, I just loved it. And so yeah, it's like her on a beach. I was like, I don't care if that's in her backyard and it's a green screen. Like, this is worth it. This is worth it 100%. The whole season. Worth it.
I gotta say, that scene, I expected her to say, now I'm off to Atlantis for my one-on-one exclusive interview with Aquaman or something, you know.
Cammy, what do you think about seeing Kat?
I was thrilled. And again, like, it was cheesy. It could have been one of those situations where, you know, you see those like phone calls between characters and you know they didn't film it at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's like, really, it could have been terrible. The screenwriting could have been every bad lighting, filmed on an iPhone in her bathroom. I still would have been fine. Like, it was great. She really has good rapport with Kara as well, and it was interesting to see that translate in situations where they're very obviously not in the same room and it's just on the phone, blah blah. When she is giving advice, she balances that level of comedy and, you know, kind of caring advice and the cutthroatness that is characteristic of the humanity that Kara loves. And I think, I mean, that would have been another, you know, source of love, that mentor-mentee relationship that we got to see briefly before Kat left. it was good to see that come into this season for Kara. And as somebody with a not miniature crush on Callista, but a very large crush on Callista, I was also thrilled to see her back.
Yeah, I was so happy to see her. Like, it's like the show needed her so bad. Like when they teased that she was coming back at the end of season 2, and she's just like, oh crap, like get like all these weights and crap that Jimmy's put in here out of here. And I'm just like, oh, they got her back. They gave her enough money. This is going to be excellent. And then like in season 3, they just hand waved that away with, oh, she's become like the White House press secretary or whatever. And I was just like, okay, sure, but that really sucks. And we haven't really had a good head of Catco since then, although, you know, Andrea was better than Jimmy. But so it was good. It was good. Like the idea that Kat's taking back over, you know, Catco, and, you know, she's, you know, giving Kara advice again, and just the banter was really good. And yeah, I mean, it's sad that it was such a short scene and that's all we get, but you know, was happy to see her. Now, speaking of Andrea again one last time, does anyone think that her like creating some William foundation or whatever she was doing at the end there is really like makes up for everything? It's like, I was looking at that, I was like, is that supposed to be like her redemption? Is like she's like she was like, I forget what she was doing, but it was something in his name that she was doing, and I was just like, okay.
Well, I mean, in her defense, she didn't kill him. I mean, she published, Lex killed him. You know, yeah, she broke a lot of ethical rules. She published under his name without him, without his permission. Definitely wrong. But I mean, well, yeah, she should probably never be allowed to like work in journalism again. I don't know that she's like irredeemable.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that there's a lot of places she should work again. Her whole technology thing blew up in her face before for ethical and technological reasons.
Hey, a lot of that was Lex and Lena, you know.
Yeah, but who's gonna believe? I mean, that's all stuff we know as viewers because we saw like how everything went down. But I don't know. Like, I think all that blows back on her as the person who was, you know, promoting the technology. But yeah, no, I don't know. I just, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way that I'm like, really, like if they just had Andrea like sort of like we found out Catco's bought back the company. We don't see anything more of Andrea. It's just kind of like, well, it was just kind of like, you know, like, oh, like I'm making up for it all by doing this. And it was just kind of like, yeah, I don't know.
That I was fine with. What I wasn't fine with was Andrea feeling immediately better after one conversation with Lena. Because, yeah, you did a bad thing. Now be a good person, and it'll all be okay. And like, oh, got it, bam. You know?
I'm not a bad person now.
Yeah, exactly.
So you flirted with being a villain. Lena like writes a book.
What a great title for a book for Lena to write, actually. Can we get a whole spin-off based off that? Just like in the vibe of like Sex in the City, and it's like Lena writing her book.
Develops like a whole 10-step rule system for how you like avoid the pitfalls.
There's just like the cheesy like music and editing that's associated with like a rom-com or like a, you know.
And then like everyone's going, I'm such a Lena. No,
Right?
you're a Kara. No, I'm like 40% dreamer. And yeah.
Oh my god. I want to put it past the CW. Like if you actually pitch that to them, they might
Well, I mean, okay, all
It'll
right,
get
now I have to
sponsored
do
by
this.
Maybelline in a second.
Well, I mean, okay, all right, now I have to do this. Kara is Carrie. Alex is Miranda. Lena is Samantha. And Dreamer is Charlotte. Bam, perfect. Okay.
I've never seen Sex in the City. That was before my time. I cannot corroborate, but that sounds so right.
That's right. You know?
I never watched Sex in the City either, but that's just because it's not the kind of show I would watch. But anyway.
Hey, you
All
know
right,
what? Your
guys.
fans are gonna love that. You know?
All right. So all right, anything else that you want to talk about with Supergirl before we go? Well, I mean, I guess I should ask overall, like, are you happy with the ending? Do you feel like this is like a good stopping point, or do you feel like they should have done like another another season. So start with you on this one, Cammie.
I think there was a lot in this season in terms of giving characters some independent time to shine, giving Kara some time to be single that should have been in seasons 2 and 3, 1, 2, and 3 type of thing. But at this point, we're in season 6. We can't go back in time. We can't unimpregnate our lead actress. We can't undo a global pandemic. You know, we're sort of, well, actually, a few of those things could be undone. But like, for the sake of the argument, none of these things can be helped. So this was the finale that we could have. And I think they made some creative choices to just do kind of as much as possible where possible. Sometimes that was a win, such as, you know, randomly screening in some of our faves. And sometimes it was a little bit of a stumble, but I appreciated the effort. I appreciated when they did let Kara shine and remember that it, you know, kind of was her story and not like 50,000 stories under the sun, and giving it additional seasons, I don't think would make it better. I think this was the final quality. The only thing that I would perhaps be interested in seeing more of would be like a witch spinoff for Lena or something like that, but it would be like me and 2 other people exactly like me watching it, and it probably won't happen.
There were rumors for a while the Legion spinoff with Mon-El and Win and all of them.
Have a Mon-El spinoff. I will personally do everything in my power to destroy it.
Okay. All right, James, what do you think about how it ended?
I think it was fine. And I don't like fine. Like I always want a show to end in I don't know, like the best fashion that it should. So it's when you get a show like it's like when you see like a season of a show, like the first season comes out and then they just end it, but they had all kinds of different plot points. Or you get to like the 100 where it's just like, oh, we're gonna cancel it after like season 3, and then surprise, we killed all our characters, but everybody loved you killing all the characters, so now we're gonna renew you for a season 4. So it's like I don't like where a show like rushes a bunch of stuff through just to make logical endpoints to try to tie it up in time. And that's definitely what this season felt like in a lot of ways from the very beginning. Was like, we're just wrapping up plot points as quickly as we possibly can to get us to the end. And we're just going to throw some really zany stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense right into it because reasons. But I do, for the most part, like where things end with characters, even when wanting some of those endings to be a little bit different. But for Kara herself, I think it ends in a positive place where they could just go and she lives happily ever after, whatever that ever after is going to be for her. And I guess that's fine. Yeah, I don't know. It's not my favorite ending, but I'm not mad either. I'm not banging down somebody's door over at WB going, "What are you doing on the CW?" So
I don't know. I think maybe more people should be banging on the doors of the CW and asking what they're doing. Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, to echo that point, it's always better when a show chooses to end versus when they're forced to end. I don't know how the participants feel about it. I don't know how Melissa feels about it. I don't know how any of the others, like if they were ready to move on or whatever. But there's a sadness to it when a show gets canceled because they're not going out on the top. They're going out because like not enough people are watching it. So then they feel the need to do kind of crazier things. I would have preferred they went out more on top. This was not on top. It wasn't. I don't know that it was the worst season. I need to actually go back and physically, if not rewatch them, at least maybe listen to podcasts about them, and then decide, which season was the worst. But I know for a fact this wasn't the best. And I guess I honestly, for me, what this season felt like, and this is something we didn't talk about, maybe that we should have, was that this season, as far as being the last season of, it was not a good last season of Supergirl, and it was not a good first season of the Super Friends either. You know, I mean,
oh God, they kept using the term Super Friends, and I cringed every single time. Oh, I blocked that out of my memory.
No, they pushed the Super Friends bad, and I thought, you know, once I accepted that this was like really not the end of Supergirl, but season 1 and only of the Super Friends, it kind of made it better. It kind of made it more bearable.
Yeah, like the thing that got me was like how everyone suddenly takes up the terms. Like if it had just been used like ironically by somebody, like referring to Kara's group as the Super Friends, like, oh, it's a little inside joke because that was an actual cartoon. But then like suddenly everyone refers to them as the Super Friends, and it is just like, why would legitimate journalists call them that? Like, no, like, because it's not like they ever like publicly appeared and said we are the Super Friends, you know, so it's not like a term they applied to themselves, but like, it's just like
literally it should have been an insult from Lex, a funny insult from Lex. That's what it should have been. But basically I just feel like this show never had the budget or the support to do what it needed to do or what they wanted to do. So I guess I'm like sad that it's going away, but I'm got an hour free every week now, you know? And that's good too.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, I think it's fine that it ended where it did. Like I said, there were certain decisions they made that I wasn't a big fan of, but you know, I think that in some ways it was almost a mercy killing. And frankly, since I suspect this was probably like a Melissa decision anyway, even though she hasn't said that publicly, but I feel like with her having a kid and everything and just probably wanting to be a mom, you know, for a year or two, it might have been a thing where she was kind of ready to go, and it's better to have somebody when they're ready to go than to like force them to like keep doing it after, you know, like feel like, oh, I need the money or whatever, and like just keep doing it after you've lost like any like real drive to do it. And I don't know, I mean, like I feel like they could have budgeted their time better, or if they were going to do more stuff with the side characters so that the promotions in this season made sense, that would have been fine. But again, it's just like, it felt like unless you were going to use these characters, you didn't need to spend all this time on them when you're ending. And so that was the main thing. I feel like there were some lost opportunities. We might have gotten a better storyline if they had used some of those like character centric episodes for other, you know, for a different kind of story or whatever. But you know, it is what it is, and you know, it's nice that at least we got to see a bunch of old faces. You know, I think everyone that's ever been like a main character on the show showed up at the end and for some amount of time, and so it was kind of nice to see everybody again. You know, I mean, Mon-El's Mon-El, but you know, it's nice seeing Win again, so you know.
$10 says they asked him back, he said no, and they said we'll let you sing a duet, and he said yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. All right, but yeah, anything we haven't talked about with the show that you want to talk about, James?
Big shout out to little Mila Jones, the cutest little girl I think in any TV show I've ever seen. Esme was the highlight of any episode for me, because I was like, she's just the most adorable child. How can nobody just love being on set every day with that kid?
She was a cute kid.
Yeah, that's Esme was who I was going to say too. We didn't talk about her. I mean, like it was a bit saccharine at times, but like compared to like recently I watched The Blacklist, and I hate disparaging on especially child actors, but like the little girl that they had playing the daughter in that show is just so wooden. And then to see this, and I was like, oh my God, she can actually. Yeah, she's the child, but she can act. I'm buying this. And of course, the moment you saw her, like she was on the screen for 2 seconds, like Alex is going to adopt her. You know,
right.
Nothing.
No,
yeah.
But and frankly, I am impressed that they were able to find a way to work it out with Alex to have, because you know, I felt like, you know, when they had the whole thing where like Alex is like, no, I'm going to be a mom, and that's the most important thing. I'll ruin my relationship. I'll do anything. I have to do this, and I'll be head of the DEO and all this. And I'm just like, whoa, like this is like crazy. Like I am impressed that they found a way by the end of the show. They did drop the whole head of the DEO thing, anything but to get her a stable relationship and get her a kid, and it felt natural. It didn't feel like, oh, we just shoehorned that's the thing that got development. That's the thing that actually got real development, was Alex's relationship with Kelly and the adoption and all of that. Like, that's the thing that actually felt like a natural growth of the characters, and not just something where it's like, crap, we gotta like shoehorn in like 5 seasons of development for these characters, right now, because we don't have any more time.
And it was such a low-key point of drama, but Esme, like the arguments that Kara and Alex had about her, about like training her, that was good stuff. That should have been a lot more of that, because like, Alex is suddenly the protective mom, and Kara's like, no, I've been here, I know what the situation she's like, and the parallels to their own childhood growing up and everything were perfect. And I thought, man, like if we had more of that, it would have been a better show.
Yeah, I mean, real conflict that actually like mirrors things that people actually do. Wow, what a concept.
It's also well paced to have it at this point in the show, because that is the type of conflict that you have after you've been introduced to a character, seen them develop, seen them experience a relationship, have powers, have experience, and now they're adopting a kid and passing it on. So a lot of the plot lines that we struggled with this season were ones that are not what you would expect for season 6 of the show. This was the plot line that I would expect to be done well in season 6 of the show, and was.
Ryan, anything we didn't talk about? Oh, I think you said Esme was the thing you wanted to bring up, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else?
I'll just give a shout out to the blocking and filming of the send-off between Lena and Kara in the final episode at the wedding, as it was filmed like a wedding and like they were saying vows to each other. I didn't win, but that's pretty close to a W, so I'll collect.
Lena's dress at that wedding, that purple, was gorgeous.
I don't know. I just saw Lena. I was like, oh, like we're really going for the witch thing now, aren't we? it's like now I've got to change my wardrobe. I've got to do like I'm a witch now, and I'm just gonna make sure that everybody knows I'm a witch. Oh man. All right, but I don't have anything more that I wanted to bring up, but so final time talking about Supergirl, everybody, and it's good to have you on to talk about it, but now's the time to say your goodbyes and let people know where they can find you. So let's start with you, Cammie.
Well, thank you for having me, Nathan, and thank you for letting me talk all things Supergirl. You can find me on Twitter and all other social media at Cammie and Ray. I will be talking about all of the new television that's kind of coming out right now all of a sudden, including but not limited to Superman and Lois and Naomi.
All right, and James?
You can find me at Roman on the Rocks pretty much across everything that exists out there. If I'm on it, I'll be there. But yeah, and maybe a Twitch stream soon. So we'll see.
All right, and Ryan.
Well, good luck finding me, frankly. I'm out there, but you have to work for it. But I'm worth it, frankly. You can find me on Facebook. You're better look there than on Twitter or anything like that. And you can always go to geekstranger.com, because I do pay a couple bucks a month for the site. Absolutely nothing new on there. But you can tell me if it's working, if it loads. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, it's like 2.5 years since the last time you updated it with anything.
And I was completely right about my predictions for Boba Fett. Thank you very much. or the Mandalorian. No, it's the Mandalorian.
It was Mandalorian, yeah.
Boba Fett hadn't even been announced.
Right. All right, well, Cammie, James, and Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show this week.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And that's it for our Supergirl episode. It's kind of funny because I'm recording this outro quite a few months after we recorded the episode, and we've gone from an ascendant DC television presence on the CW to now questioning if by the end of 2023 there will be any DC content left on the CW. There's only the potential for the new Gotham Knights series to continue on, and for Superman and Lois to continue on, and we won't know the fate of either of those shows, I believe, until May of 2023. So we'll see what happens when we do our review of the final season of The Flash and of this next season of Superman and Lois. At that point, we'll probably know what's going on with the DC content on the CW and be able to talk about it a little bit. The jury's still out on whether I'm even going to talk about Gotham Knights or not. It'll depend on what I see in that series and if I feel like there's anything worth talking about. But anyway, we hope that you enjoyed this episode about Supergirl. We hope that you've enjoyed our journey with Supergirl. We've been covering it since season 3. So in some ways, it's kind of sad to see it go, but I think Supergirl was kind of at a point when it needed to end. It was getting a little long in the tooth, and in hindsight, The Flash probably should have taken a page out of Supergirl's book and ended a little bit earlier than it is, but who knows? Flash season 9 might be excellent. But anyway, let us know what you thought of this episode. You can do that in a variety of different ways. One way is to email us at everything@42cast.com. Another way is to go to our website, 42cast.com, and leave a review on any of the episodes there. You can also go to our Facebook at facebook.com/42cast or contact us on either Twitter or Instagram at 42cast. You can also leave us reviews on Stitcher or Apple Podcasts. The one on Apple Podcasts helps us because it will promote our show more in searches. So if you do have an Apple account, I would really appreciate if you would leave a review. I also want to mention the ESO Network Patreon. That's a place where you can go to support all the shows on the network. There are various tiers for different levels of contribution. You can get access to early episodes, exclusive episodes, or even a whole exclusive ESO Network podcast. So go to patreon.com/ESO Network, check that out, and if you have any funds to contribute, we would certainly appreciate it. You can find me on 2 other podcasts. One is Time Streams, where my friend Juliet and I are going through all of Doctor Who from the beginning. You don't have to buy the episodes to listen to it. We describe the important things that happen in every story. So if you just want to hear our banter, you can do that. But definitely if you either have the episodes already or want to buy the episodes, you'll get more out of it if you're following along with the series with us. You can also find me on Legendary Forces. That's where Juliet and I again, but also joined by our friends Joe, Ashley, and Corey, are going through all of Star Wars fictional media from the beginning. So that's all the movies, TV shows, comics, novels, anything that takes place in the Star Wars universe. We talk about it, we talk about the quality of it, but we're also talking about Star Wars in the sense of a evolving franchise. You know, what is the Star Wars universe? What are the things that are informing the Star Wars universe, and how is it changing over time? So if that sounds interesting to you, that is Legendary Forces. Come check us out. In other news, I'm making my preparations to go to Chicago TARDIS this year. I don't know what panels I will be on yet. Hopefully I'll be able to get that information out before the con so that if any of you are coming to Chicago TARDIS, you can come, you can say hi, whatever. Otherwise, if you just hear my voice, feel free to come up and say hi anyway at Chicago TARDIS. But look forward to seeing some of you there. In other news, finished She-Hulk on Disney Plus, watching the Rings of Power on Amazon right now. I have opinions, but I'm not going to state them here because I'm going to do episodes on both of those things. So watch this space. We'll definitely talk about those series. And next up, I think, is Andor. It's getting close to the end of when that's going to finish up. So then, of course, I like to binge the season once it's complete. So I'll be watching Andor soon. We'll do an episode on that as well, I'm sure. So keep watching this space. Hope to have more recent content as we sort of chug through the backlog. I know this past month hasn't really helped because we've kind of set ourselves back again. We're about 4 or 5 weeks behind, whereas hoping we would be here, but we're back. Had a lot of stressors and a lot of things coming up, but we're back now. Things should be a lot more regular from here. I know I probably shouldn't state that publicly, but oh well. I'm not a superstitious person. All right, well, that's a wrap on Supergirl. Join us back next week when Cal Dodd will not be joining us. And until then, this is Nathan signing off. You have been listening to the 42 Cast, copyright 2021. Got a question for the ultimate answer? contact us at everything@42cast.com. Theme music is Sharper Swords by Brandon Ellis. Check out more of his work at www.cityfires.com. The 42 Cast is a proud member of the ESO Network.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.